everybody, it's Shaman Sister Sin, and you're listening to the Meditations and More podcast brought to you by littleshaman.org. That's me, the Little Shaman. Today I wanted to bring you the first installment in a series that I'm calling Interview with The Narcissist, and I have here with me as my guest a person who was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. He has chosen to go by the name Joe, which is not his real name. And we're going to be covering a lot of information, which is why I've decided to break it up into a couple different videos. And so let me go ahead and introduce Joe.
Hi.
And as I said, we're going to be covering a lot of information here. So I think where we're going to start at, one of the most popular videos on my channel is how the narcissist is created. So I think we're going to just start with maybe some free-form talking, and you can tell us about your childhood.
Okay, well, I guess what most people would see was like a normal childhood. Both my parents stayed together throughout my whole childhood, and they argued actually pretty often, nonstop. Always argued about money. Always took a lot of their anger out on not only me, but my two brothers too. Said a lot of really nasty things a lot of times.
Can you give us an example of that?
Saying things like, they wish that I was never born, that I'm stupid, I'm an embarrassment, things of that nature.
And what about your brothers? Were they affected the same as you? Did they have any type of mental illness or personality disorders or anything like that?
They weren't ever diagnosed, but one brother, he ended up becoming addicted to crack and heroin and died in a drug deal gone bad many years ago. My other brother, we don't even talk. He has his own ways too, so I'm sure that we're all affected, in different ways. So, going back to how I was treated, I was told that before I was born that my parents thought I was going to be a girl, and they had everything set up for that. And then when I was born, truth be known, I was a boy, and my mom always told me that that was like a really huge disappointment. Would
I be correct to say that because of that you didn't feel like you were ever wanted?
Yeah. And a lot of times I would always, I had a friend that lived behind me and a friend that lived up the street, but most of the time I would just be to myself, play with my toys by myself and things like that. All my mom really cared about was my grades in school. Wasn't really there too much as far as like any problems or anything. And my dad, he would either be at work or he would just kind of stick around in his room by himself most of the time. So as far as like any kind of emotional support, it really wasn't there.
We often hear that one or both of the parents of people with narcissistic personality disorder will be affected with one of the cluster B personality disorders like borderline personality disorder, or that they would be a psychopath or a narcissist themselves. Were either one of your parents diagnosed, or looking back, do you think you saw any evidence of that? Or
as far as my dad's irritability, perhaps maybe, but that could also be dealing with my mom too, and dealing with three of us too, as far as me and my brothers. I really wasn't like that troublesome of a kid at least not until I got older, because I would always just kind of keep to myself a lot of times, or just kind of do my own thing. And as far as mom, that was a completely different beast. She would always try to use my dad as leverage, like calling him up at work if didn't think that she could handle us, or like as a scare tactic, I guess you could say, get him all riled up at work, complaining about us. Or there was one time I remember where we were at the dinner table and she was all worked up about something. I can't remember exactly what, but she just grabbed a steak knife and acted like she was going to try to slit her wrists at the dinner table. Just behavior like that.
So, in your opinion, do you think that she was affected with some type of narcissism? Because you and I have talked, obviously not on the microphone, and in my opinion, it's possible she was an undiagnosed borderline personality.
Possibly. She was very, I don't know if I would want to say vain, but what mattered to her was how she looked to other people.
Like appearances.
Exactly. That's why if we would get in trouble or something, or be in trouble at school or whatever, the thing that she would be yelling at us the most is, how we're making her look bad.
Why was your school performance so important to her? What was her job?
She was a teacher. She was a teacher's aide at my school, actually, before she actually got a real teaching job at a different school. So, when I was in high school, my mom was, right there. and it wasn't good, because that's when I ended up finding my own group of friends, and I was starting to smoke weed, drink, and do other kind of acting out my own issues and anger and everything like that. And I was just kind of like that creepy guy at school, I guess you could say. So, and to her, that was just like a complete embarrassment, because of course, other kids would say things to her about me and be a complete embarrassment to her.
Was that always her reaction? Did she ever try to find out what the problem was with you, or was it always an antagonistic situation of you're making me look bad?
The latter. As far as the weed, she didn't really catch on to that real quick. I mean, there's times where she got so tired of it, put me in adolescent unit one time, because they have a bar downstairs, my parents' house, and I would just go through all the liquor. I remember one time I was so drunk, a friend of mine, he had to carry me down the stairs and put me to bed so bad, and then they found all the empty liquor bottles and basically just threw me right into the adolescent unit.
You mean for rehab?
They wanted to call it rehab, but it wasn't really rehab. It was more like adolescent unit for depression, and because also I was having really bad suicidal thoughts.
So like a psychiatric unit?
Yeah, pretty much.
So their first tip-off was that you were doing drugs and drinking, or was there anything before that?
I was mainly drinking. I didn't actually start smoking weed until after I went to the adolescent unit. I mean, I was still in high school at the time.
Now, you said that, going back a little bit, you usually kept to yourself and things like that. What is the reason for that? What is the reason why? Is it because, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. What is the reason why you kept to yourself when you were, because how old are we talking about here? Like young, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and what is the reason for that? Because you also had two brothers, and you did state that you had some friends. So what is the reason why mostly you would keep to yourself?
Well, I would say before I was even 12 years old, I was a very imaginative kid. So I would just basically play myself a lot of times, my own imagination, just do my own little pretend games with myself, my own little fantasy world. And then, I guess a lot of kids do. But I mean, I had a friend of mine behind me, which me and him would play Dungeons and Dragons with his uncle, like the old school Dungeons and Dragons. And that just ended up just even making it even more imaginative.
I'm looking more for a feeling or an answer regarding your feelings of why. Is it more that you just felt comfortable on your own and didn't see the desire for other people, or is it because you felt you wouldn't be accepted, or?
I just didn't feel the desire. And then once my friend moved away that was living behind me, I mean, that I didn't have any friends whatsoever, years.
And did you feel lonely, or that you were not interested, or how did that play out in your mind as a child?
Well, after, a couple years, I would say, because my friend behind me, I mean, he moved away, I guess I was 12, I think, 11 or 12. By the time I was 13, I just became of the mind that it's on me. I got to comfort myself. I got to rely on myself, because there ain't going to be nobody else. I can't rely on my parents, and I rarely saw any other relatives like my grandparents or my aunts and uncles. I only saw my aunts and uncles Christmas or Thanksgiving. Relatives didn't come around too much, and so I mean, it was just it was me and me alone.
And how do you think that affected your mindset or the way you looked at other people growing up, or did it just feel normal to you all the time?
It felt normal to me. I didn't really think about that age, preteens. You don't really think about what's normal and what's not. You're just going through what you're going through, or at least that's what I thought, because that's when suicidal ideation started too. Like I said, I had to rely on myself, but at the same time, I was just so miserable and so unhappy, because you do feel alone, against a world that you don't understand. And I mean, dude, I was probably suicidal every day. Think about it. I mean, I would even, it's weird, because being 12 years old, you're sleeping with your arms crossed laying on your back, because that's just because that's what you want. You don't want to wake up.
And what were the feelings behind the suicidal ideation? Was it looked at as because you really want to die? Is it an escape from your feelings? Or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm trying to put it in a frame of reference where everybody can understand the feelings behind that.
I really wanted to die. I didn't feel any didn't feel love, man. Didn't think my parents didn't really acted like they really loved me or anything. They were more worried about themselves and what they were doing.